And they would, mostly the aristocracy or the, not the, well, so-called Kshatriyas, the monarchy of that time. And they would use it to, finance the kingdom. But for the general populace, there was no need. They used to live by plowing the land. So in and of itself, gold is not sinful. Whether it's standardized or whether it's not standardized. Because there's nothing actually sinful in Krishna's creation. The only thing that makes it sinful is its misuse. So when gold's used appropriately, there's no problem. But when it's not used in Krishna's service, then there's a big problem. And we go 1 inch from the guidance of the Vedas, and then everything becomes topsy-turvy. Things go from bad to worse. So, Srila Prabhupada, he never actually said that a little bit of sense gratification or a little bit of, it's okay. He was always very adamant that everything for Krishna, nothing for ourselves. And this is very wise of Prabhupada. Well, one might say that Prabhupada's wise, obviously. But I can see the wisdom in Prabhupada. My realization is that, that as soon as we start to deviate from that, then we create so many disturbances in the mind. And these are disturbances because we're actually conditioned by the modes of nature. And therefore, we need to understand the need to use everything as a service to the Supreme Lord. As soon as we stop doing that, how did it start? We said in the 1700s that they started standardizing. So what was the need for standardizing? Everything was simple. Why didn't it carry on as it did? So I was reading a Bhakti Godly magazine a few years ago from the early 1990s. And there was one article about agriculture. And it was by Hare Krishna David Asaya. I'm assuming it was a Prabhupada disciple, I'm not 100% sure. I think it was on the farm in Pennsylvania in the USA. And she was quoting Bhishmadev. And Bhishmadev gave so much wisdom, he was actually Mahajan, he still is a Mahajan. But at that time, he was preaching to, the prayers of Bhishmadev to MAHARAJA18, which are very voluminous, so many things he covered. And one of the things he covered, he said to MAHARAJA18, there are three things that we shouldn't sell. And he said, one is poison. So, we don't have to be very intelligent to see, if somebody wants to buy poison, we should ask them what they wanted it for, But poison's one. We shouldn't sell poison because it's obvious that that's not going to be used for it may be used for a beneficial purpose, but maybe not. Then he said we shouldn't sell hair. And at the time I thought, what's hair got to do with it? And then he explained later, I'll explain later about that. And then he said we shouldn't sell milk. We shouldn't make profit on milk, in other words. And then Bhishmadev started to explain that, naturally when we sell something for profit, we have to be competitive. Is that right? If we start selling, somebody else starts selling. So we have to make sure that, our overheads are not too much so that we can keep our price competitive to sell it. And so, one of the overheads that accrues when we have cows is that after some time, the cow doesn't give milk anymore when it gets older. And then when it gets older and it doesn't give milk, we still have to actually pay to feed the cow. We have to have grass, we have to have shelter, we have to have hay for the winter. And so it becomes a a non-profit overhead. And so in order to keep in competition with the other milk sellers, what do we do with the cow? Well, we'll not mention it here, but obviously what happens is that the cow is actually sold or slaughtered. You know, get rid of the overhead. And so this is where meat eating started. Why? Because to make profit. It's not the milk that's at fault. We can sell milk to anybody, but if we want to make profit from it, make profit from the cow, then there's a problem. We can, you know, we can use the milk for ourselves and make butter or make yogurt, butter, and so many products, and any surplus we can sell. But, you know, we shouldn't be dependent on it. So that's the formula. That as soon as this, you know, ita dvesha samutina dvanvanya bharata, this what they call icha, desire, dvesha, and hate. So this is all part of the same formula mentioned in the 7th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. What do we desire? We desire wealth. We desire all the things that wealth can bring us. And so we need Lakshmi, we need money. So Icha and Dvesh, what do we don't like? We don't want to be poor. These are two things anyway. So as soon as we desire more than what's allotted, then we can see straight away so many problems come in. Even the first thing that happens, we start killing the cow. So then we break the Ishavashyam principle that, you know, it's not meant to be like that. It's meant to be for the satisfaction of the Lord. We're not trying to get excess satisfaction for ourselves. And so right at the beginning of the process of devotional life, the Ishopanishads tell us that, you know, use the Ishavashyam principle, follow the directions of the Vedas, and then, you know, we can use everything in a progressive way to serve Krishna. And how does it work? Ishavashyam principle. Because the verse before that, Om Purnam Adapurnamidam, Purnat Purnam Udachite, Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Vashishyate. No, we don't have to do anything else but, you know, live a simple life and then follow Krishna's direction in how to live and worship him. And if we do that, Om Purnam, everything's complete. What's that completeness? First of all, this particular material body we have is perfect, it's complete for self-realization. This material world we live in is perfect and complete for self-realization. The whole agricultural and ecosystem is perfect and complete for our maintenance. So it's only after sheer, you know, brute ignorance that we actually break that principle. And so we can see that this desire to have wealth, or this where gold becomes the root of all evil activities. And so Kali knows that. And Kali works in so many nefarious ways so that we have desire for increasing our wealth and our so-called prosperity. First, she'll tell us that, you know, we don't need to follow the Shastras, we can become our own leader. And then she encourages people to follow those leaders. He encourages the leaders. And then when the leaders mistake, he encourages the followers to criticize the leaders. And then when the followers, you know, overthrow the leaders, then he encourages the followers to act in nefarious ways. And then there's competition in another country or another nation will, you know, fall out with that particular leadership. And it goes on and on. Kali is just stoking everybody's Icha Dvesha, desire for wealth and hatred of being less than anybody else. So gold standard, even by the experts, it's not in of itself a cure to the problem, although Prabhupada spent the purport saying that what he's saying in that purport is that if we just, Isavashyam, we're given gold, don't try to spend more gold than what you already have. Don't create a false standard. Be satisfied, contentment in devotional service. We're serving Krishna. Whatever situation we're in, that's perfect for us. As soon as we start desiring more or think we should have more, then we become disturbed. So, you know, first, one of the qualities of a devotee is that satisfaction. We're satisfied that we've got the opportunity to serve Krishna. And whatever service Krishna sends, we do it with wholehearted enthusiasm. Because, let's face it, even in devotional service, if we're actually over-endeavoring for something, then we become disturbed. If we, you know, we meant to actually try very hard to serve Krishna, to go through that tapasya, but with the proper consciousness. So, you know, what's the spiritual world? Spiritual world is Chintamani Prakara Sadma Sukalpa Vriksha Laksavriteshu Surabhi Abhipalayantam Lakshmi Sahasya Satasam Brahma Sevimanam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Vidam. So it's saying that, you know, Brahma Samhita, it's talking about what the spirit Sambram, was it? Lakshmi Sahasra Sata. Sahasra Sata means hundreds and thousands of millions of gopis serving Supreme Lord, or Lakshmis. You know, they're serving out of pure love. It's not enough. There's no tapasya. It's not a tapasya. Then, you know, the Venam Pandantam, Surabhi Avipalayantam. Surabhi Avipalayantam, sorry, yeah. There's countless Surabhi cows delivering, you know, transcendental milk products for all the entities. It says these are spiritual products. There's desire trees, fulfilling everybody's desire in the spiritual world, fulfilling everybody's desire to serve Krishna with that particular fruit or whatever the desire tree, whatever one wants from the desire tree. It's unlimited. And, you know, Chintamani, the whole spiritual world is made up of Chintamani stone. You know, so we can just imagine, there's no, in other words, there's no tapasya. What do we perform tapasya for? Tapasya means the material world. Spiritual world, no tapasya, that's the point. That's the first verse which we learn of the Brahma Samhita usually when we're going through the prayers of Lord Brahma. And then the last verse is the same. It's actually expounding the nature of the spiritual world. So yeah, material world starts. The first thing what's the first words that are spoken in the material creation? Lord Brahma is searching, you know, in the lotus. He doesn't know, he's in the dark, he doesn't know where he is. You know, he's completely bewildered. Then he thinks, maybe I should just have a breather and try and think about the situation. Then all of a sudden he starts meditating. Here's two words, Papa. Welcome to the material world. Even Lord Brahma has to perform tapa. And Lord Brahma, being very intelligent, he starts to perform the tapasya of worshipping the Supreme Lord. And then in due course, he's given the ability to, you know, create all the living entities and paraphernalia within the material world, a secondary creation, Visharga. Gobhidakashai Vishnu creates all the elements, or they come through him, and 24 elements, and then these elements are manipulated and joined together by the knowledge given by Bhagavata Vishnu, and Lord Brahma creates so many living entities. And then, you know, when they come into being, what's the first thing they tapa? The first thing, material world means automatically, as soon as we're born, just to maintain this body, there's so much austerity. So yeah, we were talking about, as soon as in the material world, we can have the spiritual world. Actually, Krishna's arranged it such. We were just talking about how there's no want. There's very little tapasya. You know, Prabhupada, if we have 3 months for planting out our seeds and, you know, cultivating, then the other 9 months are free to, you know, worship the Supreme Lord. So there's a little bit of tapasya if we follow Krishna's guidance. But we just heard how we start to create a load of tapasya by, first of all, trying to make some profit on the cow. So what about the hare? How does this come into it? You know, have we got any barbers out there or hairdressers? No, I don't think so. Okay, so hair. What it really means is, you know, the hair on a sheep. What do they call it? Wool. Is that right? You know, on a llama, there's another kind of wool. On these furry animals, this wool is highly sought after. So even in England, you know, a few hundred years ago, all the, you know, Shudras, or the serfs as they call them, they used to live on the land. And so, you know, they used to grow their own food, they had their own goat or they had their own cow. Very, you know, and the landowner would just tax them a little bit for the wheat that they grew. He'd take a percentage, but other than that, they didn't have anything to do, you know. So you know, the landowner earned enough money to support himself and give taxes to the king or to the sheriff. And, you know, life went with plenty of time, a little bit of profit, enough to get by, live comfortably. But then, you know, the landowner just, you know, age of Kali means that Kali starts using this gold as a temptation. He starts dangling the carrot. And you know, the landowner gets the message, you know, real gold. I can make gold through this land. And he starts to understand that if he puts sheep on the land and, you know, clears the serfs off the land, makes them homeless, the serfs don't make much profit, but the sheep do. If he shears those every year, wool's a very, very expensive commodity, especially in the northern hemisphere. And so then he can actually spin this wool and make so many things and make bigger profit. So gold is coming in again. You can see how it's working, the desire for profit. Okay, so, you know, in the previous chapters, we were hearing how it wasn't just the cow that was suffering. Is that right? It was the bull also. 3 of his legs had been taken away and he was hobbling along. And he was asked by Parikshit Maharaj, you know, who's the perpetrator? Who's done this? And the bull was, you know, saying that it's very difficult to understand. But he was saying, he who thinks the perpetrator, who identifies the perpetrator, he gets the same result as the perpetrator. Because the perpetrator is not the real doer. Anything that happens in this world, if we recognize it's that person who's done it, then we've misunderstood. You know, Bhagavad Gita says how there are 3 doers. One is the immediate person we see. One who's a little bit intelligent will see that it's the modes of nature which has been influenced by the demigods under the direction of the Supreme Lord. And one who's more intelligent, he'll see it actually, that, you know, everything's working by the will of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So yeah, we were talking about, so we'll come back to that in a little bit. So we were talking about, in the previous chapter, it talked about how, you know, I missed the thread now. I went up too much of a tangent. I've got to back step a little bit. We were in this canto. We were talking about gold. How gold is the cause of all the problems. And then we started talking about, you know, this lust for or this greed for more wealth. And we gave 2 examples of wool and of milk. And we're talking about the bull. How what the bull got to do with it. So the bull was, you know, what is the bull used for? The bull they use for, they'll tie its nose to a central pivot, and they'll send it on walking around in a circle, and they'll use it to grind grains. Yeah, milling machine or grind machine. They'll grind grains. Those grains will make flour, and then they can make so many products, different types of bread. And what else does the bull do? It goes in the field and pulls the plough. So, you know, the bull is actually very necessary for agricultural work. But has anybody seen a bull walking? Put your hands up. You can click on your hands. You don't have to click on your hand. Who's seen a bull walking? Nobody. Who's been to Vrindavan? Nobody. Okay.
We have lots of bulls in Gitanagri.
All right. Is that where you are?
Close, yes.
Close. Okay.
Yes.
So right, the bull. So you know, it's like it plods along. You know, probably not even 1 mile an hour, maybe half a mile an hour. Is that right? And so you know, it takes all day to plough one field, or to, you know, time. And so you know, by the time you've got all your you know, and then you have to go through and cut all the wheat when it's grown. But you know, the quicker you can actually, you know, a person who's thinking in terms of making some money, you know, the gold influence again, he'll be a little bit agitated. Why is it taking so long? If the bull was going faster, I could plough more fields, I could plant more grains, more seeds, and I could make more money. You know, basically all he needs to do is plough and make enough percentage profit to give to the landowner or the king, and keep enough grains for himself and his family, and some maybe to barter with for some other things that we may need. But no, with this principle of not using the Isavasya principle, the God-centered, he starts to think about himself and making more profit for things which he doesn't really need. And so then he uses is what they call duskritina. His intelligence becomes duskriti. Kriti means merit, it has merit. Duskriti means that it's actually used in the wrong way. He starts to misuse his intelligence, and then he sees a horse. We've seen a horse. It's pretty nifty compared to a bull. It's pretty quick, you know, clippity-clop, clippity-clop, clippity-clop. Even when it's walking, it probably goes at maybe 4 or 5 miles an hour, I don't know. And so he's thinking, whoa. So if I attach that horse to the plough, then I could actually plough more fields. So then what do they do with the bull? Same as they do with a cow. So this is what happened. And then later on, Industrial Revolution, even the horse is not going fast enough. So we'll get a tractor. And then when you get a tractor, things become more complicated. We need parts for it. We need oil. We need this. We need that. We need tires. And so many people are engaged just to keep that tractor going. So it just complicates material existence. And so it means more what? Tapasya. Tapasya. Anyway, I've just given an idea of how things have escalated from this, misusing gold or trying to profiteer to make more gold. So the gold, as we said at the beginning, the gold in itself is okay. But it's the use of a thing which makes it sinful. Yeah. So we should understand that whatever tapasya we have to perform in this world, what's that verse? Bhaktaram yagya tapasam. Krishna is the enjoyer of all tapa, of all our austerities. If we only perform tapasya to actually please Krishna, then there's no problem. Because why? Sarvalokam Eshram. He's the enjoyer because he's the owner. If he's the owner of everything, he should be an enjoyer. In devotional service, it may be that we can't come to that standard that Prabhupada's asking straight away. So there's an example of Dhruva Maharaj. It's a dvesha, desire. He wanted a kingdom bigger than his grandfather's, Lord Brahma. He was struck by that. And Narada Muni said, Narada Muni eventually, when he saw his determination, he gave him devotional service to perform. It was tainted devotional service. He was performing that service for a kingdom bigger than his grandfather's. But then eventually he was so determined to perform that tapasya that, even though it was tainted devotional service, Lord Vishnu was so pleased with him that he appeared before him. And when he appeared, Dhruva Maharaj lost all his desire to see anything else but Krishna or Lord Vishnu. But Lord Vishnu then, he fulfilled his desire. And then at the end of that fulfilling his desire, he said, you will reign for 36,000 years on a planet known as Sweta, a spiritual planet in the universe. And then you'll go back to Godhead. But at the time when Lord Vishnu appeared, Dhruva Maharaj understood his faulty mentality and he felt ashamed. He thought, I shouldn't be asking anything from the Lord, but I did. And so, he was very disturbed with himself. But that's, that example of Dhruva Maharaj, it's such a nice story for devotees. In fact, Maitreya, he starts to speak about this in the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM very quickly, because it says that this pastime of Dhruva Maharaj shows that even a materialistic person can become very advanced very quickly, providing they very strictly perform this process of devotional service, really focus. So, whatever hard work we do it for Krishna. And then that eventually will purify the heart from all contamination, and then pure devotional service will manifest. So this is what I wanted to say about, the gold and gold standard and the way it actually influences society to become greedy, and then all the other sinful activities manifest due to that. Even the sub-religious principles of dharma, artha, moksha, and karma. This is mentioned in SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM. It says SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM is transcendental, this dharma, artha, moksha, karma, because it's on the same principle as the gold standard. Why do we perform religion? Because the same as Dhruva Maharaj did, dharma. So we can have artha, some gain. And when we have that gain, artha, then we can enjoy dharma. And then, dharma, artha, then karma, then we can enjoy the senses. And then hopefully we can become frustrated in that search for moksha. But even though we may be performing our devotional service with some material gain or artha, the same principle applies that happened to Dhruva Maharaj. So Prabhupada's given us whether, akarma, sarva karma va, moksha karma udaradi, tivrena bhakti yogida, jitata purushamparam. Whether we have those material desires or not, and even if we desire freedom from this material world, he says, then we should still carry out this process of devotional service very, very strictly. And in due course of time, all the inebrities in our service will be cleared away. And so I like to quote one nice verse from the 11th canto of SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM. If you want to read it, it's 11th canto, 20th chapter, text 27 to 29. I can't remember the Sanskrit, but it's talking about, Krishna's talking about his devotee. He says, even though his devotee has so many material desires, he said he should actually remain happy in devotional service, knowing that, these material desires are going to cause him distress, he's going to suffer. But through that distress, eventually he'll give up those desires and he'll completely surrender unto my lotus feet. So we should have that outlook, having awaiting faith in the narrations of my glories. Just lower it a little bit, just a minute. Being disgusted with all material activities, knowing that all sense gratification leads to misery, but still being unable to renounce all sense enjoyment, my devotee should remain happy and worship me with great faith and conviction. Even though he is sometimes engaged in sense enjoyment, my devotee knows that all sense gratification leads to miserable results, and he sincerely repents such activities. So Krishna is really encouraging us there. Yeah, we've got attachments. We may not be, or personally speaking anyway, we may not be completely pure. But, be joyful in devotional service. Be positive in devotional service. Eventually, they won't bother us anymore. Okay, we can stop there. Have we got any? Actually, I've been reading one book. Maybe I think maybe a lot of people have read this. It's called Black Lotus. Has anybody read that book?
What's the title?
What?
What did you say the title is?
Black Lotus.
Blind Mortis. And I don't think I've read it, no.
Black Lotus.
Well, it's a book.
That is
Yes.
that is the biography of Bhakti
Okay,
Maharaj.
okay. Black Lotus, yes. Bhakti Swami Maharaj, yes.
Yeah. So, I was looking on the Kindle. I wanted something to download. And then I came across this book. And I thought, yeah, I need something to read as well as Shastra, something lighter. And, I like Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, so I downloaded it. And, like you say, I'm at the point now in reading it where he actually, he's got one devotee called, is it Ekanath or something, and his wife. And he sent them to West Africa where Brahmananda was there. This is 1979. And I've got to that point. And so I know that Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, he spent a lot of time in West Africa. And at one time, very concentrated. And so I wondered whether anybody on this call was around when Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj was active in West Africa. And maybe they can fill me in on some things which I haven't already read, or some personal some personal experiences.
Well, thank you, Maharaj. There are quite a few devotees on this forum who have fortunately had so much experience, interactions with His Holiness Bhakti Swami Maharaj. So they may share some pastimes with you. Particularly, we have Srimad Varaha Prabhu here. He is one of the very, very early devotees in West Africa. It's in the very early 80s, like 81, 82 then, all the way till now. We have Salika Prabhu there, who is also very, very old, senior devotee. So they may share some pastimes with the Bhagavatam Swami Maharaj.
Yeah.
But maybe before they share, I have a question from the text and the class you gave. And I must say thank you so much for the class. Lots of practical steps to trying to become a serious devotee. But of course, my brain is porous. My brain is very little. I cannot understand. And that is why we are blessed to have somebody like you to speak, so we may share our doubts with you. And one doubt I have is, Srila Prabhupada mentioned in the purport that wherever there is gold, there is bound to be nefarious activities. And I'm sure Maharaj Parikshit very well knew this. Maharaj Parikshit knew that wherever there is gold, there is bound to be nefarious activities. And Kali himself is nefarious personified. So why would Maharaj Parikshit allow Kali the opportunity to live in a place where there is gold? I'm originally from Ghana, which is before we attained independence, it used to be called Gold Coast. So it's very interesting how Srila Prabhupada talks about gold in this text, because I lived in a city in my country where we mine gold. And that gold is an epitome of sense gratification, Maharaj. So my question is, Maharaj Parikshit knew this very well, that wherever there is gold, sense gratification abounds. So in attempt to trying to slow down this sense gratification, he's actually pushing Kali to go there and then do more. Why would he have to do that? That's just my question, wondering why Maharaj Parikshit would do that.
Yes, it seems like a dichotomy that, why would he's trying to actually keep Kali out of his kingdom, and he gives him the facility to live in his kingdom. Well, there's one thing is that, Kali surrendered to him. And he says that a Kshatriya, if somebody surrenders to him, then he'll give him shelter. And so that's what he did. He first of all offered him shelter in 4 places, which Kali knew he wouldn't be able to, it's a trick, but then when he asked for something else, he gave him that shelter. So it seems like, it's like Krishna, he gives shelter to all the living entities in creation, although some of them, they're so sinful, they want to actually forget Krishna forever. But it still facilitates their situation. So it's like, it seems like that, Parikshit Maharaj is pure devotee, he's giving everybody a chance to exist. So it's not a very satisfactory answer. And but that's the limit of my understanding, is that, you know, I mean, Krishna has his plan. These 4 ages are not there, you know, ad hoc. They sometimes appear and sometimes don't appear, but they appear on schedule. And so, you know, Kali Yuga is coming, the influence of the age, and Kali is there for a specific purpose. So, you know, Krishna also uses his devotees in a particular way for, you know, to make sure that the plan, that the whole system carries on working. Like, why would Bhishmadev, a pure devotee, why wouldn't he just stand up in the corner of a house and start, you know, and kill Dushasan as soon as he started to try to strip Draupadi? Nelly would have done that, but why? It doesn't make sense. But, you know, for the pastime, he did that. So I can only assume, I can't say for certain, that, you know, the Kali Yuga needs to come, it needs to have an entrance, and here's the entrance of Kali, and here's a place where, you know, don't go there. This is where Kali resides. But if you want to feel the weight of the Kali Yuga, go there, start using gold in a wrong way.
Well, Maharaj, thank you for the answer. I mean, the answer you gave me, say all of us, is very similar to an answer somebody else had previously given to a similar question to what I just asked you. And these answers make me think that sometimes we cannot wholeheartedly accept and practice everything we read from the scriptures, because due to time, place, and circumstance, what was practiced in the scriptures might not be applicable in our situation. For example, you were talking about the Dushasan trying to strip Draupadi naked in the assembly of all these great personalities. And all the great personalities were there. They could not say anything. They could not do anything. At the same time, when Ashwatthama actually wanted to kill Maharaj Parikshit even before he was born. And he did kill the 5 sons of the Pandavas. When Bhima wanted to kill him, the same Draupadi prayed for his forgiveness, and he was forgiven. So when you look at all these things, then it means that no matter what the crime is, no matter how heinous the crime is, once somebody repents, then you have to forgive such a culprit. And if that happens to be the case, then it means that in society, there should not be a capital punishment. I asked this question to somebody else, but somewhere in the scriptures also, it is recommended that capital punishment should be given where applicable. So these things are kind of confusing until you get somebody with a deeper understanding to try to explain. But what I'm trying to say is it's very difficult to just read something from the scriptures and try to practice it without having a deeper understanding behind it. What do you think, Maharaj? Or what do you say? Maharaj, you are muted. Sorry.
That's what I'm saying, that scripture has to be applied according to time, place, and circumstance.
Okay.
You know, it's called, there's a science called hermeneutics.
Yeah.
Hermeneutics takes into consideration every aspect of the subject from different angles of vision, the different people who are in it, the different circumstances. So all these affect the way we actually apply Shastra. It's not that, you know, we say something in Shastra and it's necessarily applied the same in every situation. So it really needs Mahajana Nagatasapanta. We have to have the Mahajana or the Acharya to apply Shastra therapeutically for the particular audience he's preaching to at that time. And that's what Prabhupada did. And not everybody, not even his God brothers, could appreciate that. And so he was very strongly criticized for what he did. You know, but Prabhupada was empowered by Krishna, and therefore he applied Shastra in an appropriate way so it would be effective in our particular situation. Whereas it wouldn't have been accepted in another situation, maybe in India 200 years ago or whatever. So yeah, when we're reading Prabhupada's books, we have to be careful that we don't get to an idea that this is right and that's wrong, because we'll find that we'll read further on and wait a minute, it's saying the opposite thing now. So, you know, there's different things. We have to understand what Shastra is he quoting from. Is it a higher Shastra or a lower Shastra? What's the level of the devotee who's speaking that particular Shastra? What's his realization? Who is he speaking about? What is the situation? Like that. So all these things, there's 4 variables that I've just mentioned there, which will mean that it'll be seen and applied in a different way in one situation and from another. And you know, I'll give you an example, shall I? How it works. I was in a temple. I was in a temple in England, and the wife of the temple president, she got a beena bonnet. I don't know if you know what a beena bonnet is. It means that she really like trying to understand one of the verses from Shastra, and she was confused. It says sadhu sangha sarva shastrikaya lavamatra sadhu sangha sarva siddhaya. And it means that a moment's association with a pure devotee can give one complete perfection. And she was, how can a moment's association give anybody complete perfection? You know, a moment is like, it's either an 1/8 of a second or an 11th of a second. It's not long anyway. So, you know, in an 11th of a second, you become completely perfect. And she couldn't, so she was asking all the sannyasis and spiritual masters who came through, and not one of them could satisfy her with an answer. And then one day I was listening to a Prabhupada tape, and the exact same question was asked by one of his disciples. And Prabhupada said, it's like that. He said, there's wet grass and dry grass. He said, if you try to set fire to wet grass, it'll take a long time. It may not even ignite. Yeah. He says, but if you set fire to dry grass, it'll immediately explode into flames. So he didn't explain it the way everybody thought he would about time. Time had nothing to do with it. He explained it that it's the receptivity of the audience and the potency of the spiritual master. You know, bang, immediately we can actually get the result. So we have to be a little bit tolerant and open-minded. And he actually eventually will understand, Krishna will reveal.
Well, thank you so much, Maharaj, for the answer. And I'm particularly happy you did mention about hermeneutics, because by the grace of a couple of my God brothers who encouraged me to take the course, I did take it, and I keep singing the glories of that course, and I do encourage all devotees to try and take that course, because
Yeah.
I'm thinking that at some point it should become a requirement for all devotees to take, because we are a preaching organization, and this hermeneutics particularly help guide devotees as to how to deliver. It's amazing. Anadi Nidanam Prabhu, please unmute. Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, Hare Krishna Maharaj, I beg to offer my humble obeisance.
Is that mine? Maharaj Prabhupada.
Okay. So, Maharaj, my question is, according to the purport, especially yesterday, in the purport, Kali asked of some, Maharaj Parasi gave Kali some few places to live. But unfortunately, such places were not in existence, so she had to ask for where good reserves are. But I learned also that when Krishna was on this planet, when he went to Dwaraka, prostitute even came on to have a darshan of the Lord. So my question here is, isn't that Kali was there then on this planet, the material world, when Krishna was also here? I hope my question is clear.
It's not very clear. I couldn't understand everything you were saying.
Okay, I'll try to repeat what he was saying. He is saying that particularly the verse 38, we're discussing 39 today. We discussed verse 38 yesterday. And in that text, it is said that Maharaj Parikshit, Kali asked for 4 places. So Maharaj Parikshit gave 4 places to Maharaj Parikshit where he can dwell. And one of such places is where there is prostitution. And his question is, even prior to Maharaj Parikshit giving Kali the opportunity to live in a place where there is prostitution going on, there was already prostitution taking place. So he was giving an example about Krishna and his devotees in Dwaraka, that Krishna, when he was in Dwaraka, at that time, Kali had not actually advented, but still there were prostitutes. So what does it really mean when we say that Kali is the one who is causing people to have all these bad natures, whereas they were already there before he even came into the picture? I tried to paraphrase what he asked.
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, you know, when we're talking about Dwarka, that's the whole oldest profession, prostitution, you know. It's like there's always going to be somebody who will break the rules in every situation. And so, you know, Krishna knows that, and he makes facility. It's just like you can't ban alcohol completely, because otherwise they'll have bootleg alcohol, you know, they'll start selling it on the black market. So, you know, they have those prostitutes in every city so that the lusty man won't go and contaminate somebody else's wife, but he's got an avenue by which he can fulfill his desires without disturbing society so much. But we have to remember that things were under control by the king. These things were there, but he's in full control of the situation. These things are regulated. But, you know, when the age of Kali so really takes a hold, then it's not like that. It just becomes wild. There's no, even the leaders are not God conscious. They become affected by Kali. So there's no Kshatriya king to control it. Maharaj Parikshit was controlling it, even though there may be prostitution houses. There may be a place where somebody can have a drink. I don't know whether they used to do that or not, but you know, things were regulated and provided for. So Kali, it's not that the effects of Kali are not there in previous ages. In Satya Yuga there was no vice, and then in the Treta Yuga there was 25%, in the Dwapara Yuga 50%, in the Kali Yuga minimum 75% vice. So the sinful activity was there to some degree in previous ages, but in Kali it really becomes rampant.
Thank you, Maharaj. Anyone else with any question? And also, please remember, Maharaj requested, he wanted to hear some pastimes of His Holiness Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj in West Africa in particular. So if anyone would like to share something with Maharaj, that would be very much appreciated.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Nanda Pranam Maharaj. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Excuse me, my camera may not come on now because of where I am. Yes, we thank you, Maharaj, for giving us such wonderful lecture and sharing with us your wisdom, which are very, very pleasing to hear, full of realizations. And it's our pleasure also to satisfy your desire to hear something about our beloved Guru Maharaj, who spent most of his time, of course, with us here in West Africa. Yes, I was there. One of the early devotees, like Sahade Prabhu said. I would like to share. I would like to share one experience with Guru Maharaj, which is a little bit in relationship with the text we are reading in the SRIMAD BHAGAVATAM right now. 1 minute, please.
Maharaj, this devotee speaking, Srimad Bhagavatam is one of the very, very early disciples of Maharaj. And he personally served him for so many years. So I think you are at the right place at the right time, Maharaj. Hare Krishna. Srimad Prabhu, please.
Yes, I had to ask them to reduce the volume of the music. Yes, so well, what we are reading now, how Mara Parishit received the personality of Kali. So in the attempt of spreading Krishna consciousness in different parts of the world, there is always the intervention of Kali, trying to make things difficult. So people hear a lot about the preaching activities of Bhaktivedanta Maharaj in West Africa, spreading the consciousness across many countries and opening many, many temples. But at one point in the late 80s, there was problem. So like say Kali tried to really come in heavily to forestall the preaching movement. And that is to be expected. Wherever there is so much success, there will be there will be people who would not be so happy and pleased with that. So some so-called devotees acting on the influence of Kali, of course, Kali in the sense, not that they just got up and tried to become hostile or antagonistic, but at that time also there was some bigger play going on in the ISKCON Global, because that time Bhaktipad was being excommunicated, and because Bhaktivedanta Maharaj was one of his assistants. So we found many of his god brothers, some of his god brothers who were trying to, I don't want to use the word sabotage, but somehow or the other, they were trying to some way they were trying to test his his endurance. That's how I want to put it. They want to try it. So these devotees got up and then they went and put in the journal that Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj ran away with so much ISKCON money and so many other allegations, against him. And so Gurudev was there, and he called a meeting. He called a meeting of all the temple presidents, and after exposing the problem, then he went on to give us a solution. So then in his giving the solution, he gave us options. He said, first option is because these people are committing Vaishnava aparad. We could act like Brahmanas and pronounce a curse on them. He said, but if we do that, then there's going to be a ripple reaction, because when there is a negative reaction to a negative action, then it will keep on going. There'll be a ripple effect of such an action. So first, he let us know what power we have as Brahmanas, and him be a pure devotee of the Lord, to counteract what was going on. But then he said, no, but we're not going to do that. But we're going to answer them with love. He said, we're going to, they already put him, he was so popular in Nigeria, he was so popular all over. And then they put him on the newspaper, front newspaper, saying, Hare Krishna leader fled with money, he ran away with women, all kind of nonsense things. And then here's Gurudev Maharaj telling us, let us answer them with love. And he requested that we should either meet them or we should think of how to answer them with love. Of course, eventually I was designated to do the communication, to write a letter to the offending devotees. And so, of course, eventually that's what we did. So this is one way that Gurudev, Guru Maharaj, Bhaktisiddhanta Swami, manifested his maturity when he was facing with adversity, and not, trying to become negative. When, in fact, in one of his teachings, he used to tell us we should make negative situation positive, and whatever is already positive, we should make it more positive. This is one of his instructions always, and we saw him doing that every time whenever the situation was difficult. So just something that I feel I need to share. Thank you, Maharaj, for giving us the opportunity.
That's a big realization, a big help, it's not easy to see things in that, but that's the Vaishnava way, isn't it? To try and turn things around. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Shimavara Prabhu, for sharing that. Well, Maharaj, I remember in those days, I'm not one of the very, very early devotees, but I'm blessed to have known my Gurudev for quite some time before his physical disappearance. And one obvious thing was in West Africa in general. West Africa is a very huge portion of the entire African continent. There is this unfortunate superstitious belief that nothing godly can come out of India. Whatever comes out of India is evil. And so when people see devotees, they liken devotees to be like people who practice like black magic. And so we were not very much liked by the general populace, and especially amongst other religious bodies. But whenever Bhaktivedanta Maharaj came to West Africa in general, and specifically in Ghana, because those days we only had one national television station. And this television station was free. So everybody who has television set have access to it. So Gurudev will have television program. And the program used to be recorded on Wednesdays, but it was played on Sundays. So when it plays on Sundays, it appears like it was recorded that very day. And the following day, which will be Monday, any devotee who goes out with books is cheap Sankirtan, because whoever watched Gurudev speak becomes so much affectionate towards devotees that just by dressing as a devotee and carrying your Sankirtan book with books in it, people just call you to ask you, what book do you have? What book do you have? So Sankirtan becomes so cheap for about a week or so, and then it becomes a little difficult again. But yeah, he speaks in such a way that even those who are against Hare Krishna movement instantly become lovers because of the way he speaks. And oftentimes it is an interfaith where different religious bodies, like maybe Muslims, Christians, Kanka, Buddhists, they meet. So it's like everybody wants to prove that they have a higher, better something than the other. Yet Gurudev would speak in such a way that even Muslims who are quite fanatical to their faith, they see devotees and they will call you, hey, Hare Krishna, come here. I saw your leader on the television last night. Oh, he is so good. He is so sweet. I wish all our pastors, our priests and imams speak like him. So that's one thing I also like to share about Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj in West Africa. It's unfortunate that most of his activities in West Africa were not recorded in video. So we are used to oral history, and we got stuck to oral history instead of recording, So we can share, but the feel is not the same as like watching it, seeing it yourself, So we have another very old senior devotee here, Harichakra Prabhu. Prabhuji, you may also unmute to say something. We have Jagat Vasu. We have lots of very old devotees, disciples of Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare
Thank
Krishna,
you.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for your class. And thank you for all that deep revelations that you gave to us. My name is Hari Chakra. And I live in Jidanagri now, but originally from West Africa, Ghana. Yeah, like talking about Bhaktivedanta Maharaj and his compassion. There was once we had an open, preaching program. We did it on an open park. So we have set his Vyasasa and we have set a bigger Vyasasa beside him with huge Prabhupada picture on the Vyasasa. And he was preaching and there were this big crowd, but mostly most of them were Christians. And so whilst Maharaj preached and during the question time, he said, if anybody has any question, there is this fanatical Christian preacher who just raised his hand, and Bhaktivedanta Maharaj said, yes. And this guy was quoting vehemently from the Bible that picture you have put there, this is the devil's doing. This man cannot save anybody. Jesus says, he was ranting and ranting. Jesus says in what John chapter 14, verse 6, that I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father but by me. Why you put this big picture there? Who is he? So we were all like on edge, but the time Maharaj was cool. He let this guy talk. Then finally, when he asked the guy, are you finished? The guy said, yes. And Bhattacharya Maharaj says, okay, the very quotation that you gave, John chapter 6, chapter 14, verse 6, that the ones you just quoted, that Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. Just count 6 verses down. Count it. 6 verses down. The verse 12. Let's hear what Jesus said about verse 12. So I want you to read it. I'm not going to read it. I want you to read it because you read the verse 6. So the guy opened the Bible and he read, and in the verse 12, it was saying that if even you have a little faith, you can do all that I'm doing, and even greater things than this you can do. So immediately the guy said, then Bhattacharya Maharaj said, did you hear that? Jesus himself is telling you that if even you have a little faith, you can do everything that he did, and you can even do greater things than what he has done. So if it's true that you are able to get that little faith, can't you also become the way, the truth, and the life? And he pointed to Prabhupada and he said, you see this man in this picture? He had that little faith. So now he's even doing greater things than Jesus did. Because Jesus himself has said that with that little faith, you can even do greater things than he did. So this man in this picture, he has that little faith. So now he can do he's doing greater things than even what Jesus did. He was so cool with the boy. And by the time the class was done, that boy got 5 books from us.
Hare Krishna.
It was so amazing that this program happened in Winneba, one of the villages in Ghana called Winneba. And it was so amazing. The way he used the same Bible to speak coolly to the guy. The preacher became so sober that at the end of the day, he bought books from us. So Guru Maharaj had a way with people. I mean, the way the guy was talking, some of us were like, I was behind the Guru Maharaj. That time we were fanning him, and my heart was racing like something. But by the time he finished answering the question, everybody was cool and the place was quiet. So this is one of the pastimes of Guru Maharaj.
A wonderful pastime.
Maharaj, I guess your time, it's a little late, your time there, right?
It's 8:30 here in Tbilisi.
Okay. Salika, you have something to share? Jagat Vasu Prabhu? These are some of the senior devotees there in West Africa. They've been loyal to Gurudev for all these years. And West Africa is quite a harsh environment for a couple of reasons. So we of course, generally one cannot pay back his debt to the Guru, but particularly what Bhaktivedanta Maharaj did for us, what he sacrificed for us in West Africa is unthinkable to think of trying to pay him back. All we can do is just pray that we will be engaged in Krishna's service. But it's quite a harsh place. And these devotees are still there, even if they have the opportunity to move somewhere else to continue with their devotional service. They still want to expand the preaching program in West Africa, so they're still there.
What do you mean by a harsh place? I didn't catch?
Well, harsh place in the sense that lots of the people, one, they are uneducated. And so our philosophy, it's kind of difficult to explain to someone without education.
Mm.
So that is one. And then two, like I was saying, there are a lot of nice people in West Africa, but economic-wise, there is so much poverty. And so it makes it hard to have people who genuinely want to surrender to Krishna. You know, lots of people, they join and they think there can be some magical wand to make their poverty turn around. And so it requires a lot of patience and cultivation to help people to understand that God worship is different from materialism. And on top of that, like I was saying, because especially in the early days, people will watch Indian movies and see a personality like Lord Brahma with 4 heads, Lord Vishnu with 4 arms, and they conclude these are evil beings. So anything coming from India is evil. And there are lots of local fetish worshippers who dress pretty much like the way devotees dress. Their dress code is very, very similar to Vaishnavas. There are some that put on the Vishnu tilak. There are some that apply the Shivite tilak. And so it makes it a bit difficult to differentiate Hare Krishnas from such people. But Bhaktivedanta Maharaj, he went through all these hardships, sometimes no electricity, dust, so many things. All right. It's not easy. But of course, things have improved so much that life then is completely different from the way life is today. In today's West Africa is pretty much like the same as Europe or US in most places. There have been so much fast and positive developments. But there still remains some crude examples of typical poverty and illiteracy. Yes, so those are there.
Yeah, it's more difficult to preach when the system is such. It's the less people are suffering, the more they can actually focus on, spiritual life. It's just suffering, then they're too much absorbed in just trying to exist. Anyway,
there was a time Bhaktivedanta Maharaj used to have Lord Nrsimhadev walking cane. I don't know if you remember. He used to have a cane that was Lord Nrsimhadev. And GBC asked him to drop it down. Yes, and he did. But like I said earlier, in West Africa, most of the time, once people know you to be Hare Krishna, they think that you are psychically very powerful. And so they want to try how powerful you are psychically. So they use subtle spells against you, even as ordinary devotees. So what to speak of when they know that this is the leader of the movement now here. So people from time to time will project negative energies against Gurudev. And oftentimes, whoever saw him with that Nrsimhadev cane, they would run because they were seeing Lord Nrsimhadev. They were not seeing the king. They were seeing Lord Nrsimhadev. And so it was kind of a big protection for Maharaj, but GBC at the time probably did not understand. And so they asked him to stop carrying the cane. And he did stop carrying the cane. But lots of the GBC personnel at the time wouldn't even dare go to West Africa to preach.
Yeah.
But he was going there to preach, and he was carrying the cane, which was giving him some sort of protection. Because like I was saying, those with evil eyes will see Lord Nrsimhadev's cane and they will run because they were not seeing the cane, they were seeing Lord Nrsimhadev. And he dropped it because he wanted to be with Srila Prabhupada in his house, ISKCON. So these are some of the experiences and lessons some of us have learned from our precious Gurudev. And we thank you so much for wanting to know about some of his pastimes in West Africa.
Oh, it's very interesting. Thank you. Feel gained a lot actually. Yeah, how his activities were influencing West Africa and what he had to go through. It's nice to hear from personal examples like that. So I'm very fortunate.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you everybody. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to say something, and maybe we can meet again sometime.
Yes. Yes,
And,
thank you so much, Maharaj. And we hope and pray that when we call on you next time, you'll be kind upon us to be with us, to bless us.
Yeah, look forward to it. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much. So dear devotees, we thank you all for being here, patiently being here for close to 2 hours. Yes.
Yeah.
And at this point, we're going to humbly request you all to unmute, and then we chant Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to express our appreciation for Maharaj's presence and the delivery. And so let's do that, please. Jai. Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,
Hare Rama,
Rama
Rama, Hare Hare.
Vancha
Kalpatarubhyascha, Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha, Titanam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namo.
Jai, all glories to His Holiness, Dayananda Swami Maharaj ki Jai.
Nanda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.
Jai.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Premanandi.
Hare Hare. All glories to His Holiness, Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj ki Jai. All glories to His Holiness, Srila Radhanath Swami Maharaj ki Jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So we hope to see you all again tomorrow. Hare